I think especially for people who maybe don't have a chance to travel a lot themselves, it's the main way we can know ourselves is by experiencing things not like ourselves. So I love that about cinema. That moment of like needle in the groove, right? Where you're right present in that moment, experiencing lived time, as well as, constantly thinking back about what you've just seen and projecting ahead. So that sort of mix is really powerful. A powerful place to be as a composer, maker, and a powerful place for me to be as an audience member. As an audience member is how it gives you a reprieve from your own habits, your own temporal habits, and you kind of let go of this contract you have with yourself and you're kind of step in someone else's time sculpture for a little bit, which is pretty exciting for me to let go of that and trust the way someone else is gonna temporally take me on a path for a little bit. When I was a young person, just sort of realizing that maybe film was what I wanted to do, because I had been going a totally different track and was sort of interested in astronomy and physics and was going to school for that. And I sort of dropped out and started taking art courses, and one of them, or two of them were really important. One was with Peter Kubelka, who I had no idea who he was at the time, but did a very mind-altering class where he just, it was very, I guess, slightly egomaniacal also, but very, very strategic and very useful, where he just showed us unsere Afrikareise for the whole semester. Every class, that's all we looked at, and we sort of broke it down and looked at it very intensely. And so I felt like the lessons had, completely changed how I thought what sound could do, what the weld of an edit could do, how actually structuring time could be political, which I had never considered before. And also up till that time, this was when I was an undergrad, cinema had never occurred to me as something to do, because I think all I had seen up to then, or mostly what I was exposed to, was narrative cinema, and I've never been a particularly strong narrative thinker. I love reading and going to see narrative cinema, but at that same time, working with somebody like Tom Palazzolo, sort of an observational documentary shooter, kind of more in the mode of Studsturkel or something, where it's very conversational, and there's these sort of revelations that come from being out in the world. I had seen documentaries, but I think I had always seen documentaries that were, they're very produced and you're very kind of coddled and sort of handheld through who all the figures are. And I love that he just kind of drops you in and where it's having you meet people on the street. So those were definitely life or trajectory changing, but also, I don't want to say unfortunately, but sort of unfortunately, when I was a student and when I was getting exposed to all those things, almost all of what we saw was white male filmmakers, which, and a lot of those changed my life, but it wasn't until maybe a decade or 15 years later or something that I started really getting exposed to the filmmakers that I feel like, and the artists who really shifted my direction to maybe a slightly more social one than I had been making earlier on. Yeah, it's one of the more comfortable tools. I know how to mine questions that I have. I'm a pretty curious person, and film in particular, if we speak about film, just that it's so multivalent that you can explore optics, and you can explore time, and you can explore society, and you can explore history, and if you're a filmmaker and you're going to tackle some concept or theme or person or collective or community that is completely new to you, you don't have to have the research credentials that, let's say, I don't know, an anthropologist or a historian might have to have. You can just say, I'm an artist and a filmmaker, and it's okay, well, of course you can, you can come talk to us. It gives you license in an amazing way. So I love it as a kind of passport um, to create stuff. I don't know. I guess I never think that people would come out of the cinema being like, ooh, this is what that film did for me. But if some of my films could let people feel that you can have intellectual ideas without language, without spoken words, that would be really great. I mean, we need words to think, right? But I also feel like there's a kind of thinking that happens sub or language that's really powerful, and I don't always, God knows I don't always achieve that, but it's great when you can in films. Because on one hand, I feel like you need to be voracious, you need to just be curious about the world and want to know about other things, but also I feel like when you're in the middle, when young students are in the middle, or any student, myself, an old student, are in the middle of making something, you also have to protect yourself from too much coming in, and maybe don't watch films, or maybe don't look at anything, or trust something coming from the inside as well. I feel like a lot of times it can be really overwhelming when people are kind of floundering, or they've got a kind of artist block, and the impulse is to go like, I gotta go to see a bunch of stuff, but that can be really, it can be demoralizing sometimes. And the ego is a fragile thing. So as much as you need to be hungry, I think you also just have to be, to let things roll off, or not set expectations for yourself that deflate you. I mean, it's a weird thing, because of course I want you to have higher expectations for yourself than anyone else would, but that's sort of like a mangled piece of advice. It's just kind of, you have to both be stubborn, eager, and also, have the roots go down deep, and trust that more than what's up here. Oh my God, it's great. I mean, to have a time travel cave of this caliber is fantastic. To sort of, if people find it, power to them, more power to them. I think if, you've grown up in a smaller town or a city even without a really fantastic cinema, you've never even really, I don't want to say you've never experienced cinema, because of course you have, but you've never experienced cinema on this level that can be like so profound, where you realize like, wow, yeah, I've really been transported. So, I mean, I remember certainly when I was a student, it was just so exciting to see the list of what was coming through. And even if you were looking at it in like a totally reverberant classroom with a projector in the back of the room, but it's your chance to see Kings of the Road or whatever. I mean, that can be life-changing. So to have that on top of, oh, wow, this palace, it's pretty exciting. But I also feel like, collective or sort of, actively programmed cinema spaces, they're important no matter how fantastic the architecture is, So I don't want to just say, like, it's this or nothing. I mean, this is inspirational, how beautiful the setting is. But I think I've also been inspired in the simplest little space with, like, terrible eye lines and, like, shitty sound. So we need them all. We just need, like, programmers who care about, see something, fall in love with it, and want to share it with people.